I have to put these on anyway.
Hey everybody, welcome to MicroMania Film Fest 2020 and the Queer Voices in Micro panel conversation. I'm just going to take a minute to do a shout out to our sponsors, and then I will leave it to our wonderful host, Tilky Hill. So, MicroMania Film Festival 2020 is possible through the sponsorship of the New Hotness Media Institute, Indie Vice, Argle Bargle, the game where you insult your friends, and Free Agent. Also, special thanks to Black Girl Film Club, Mystic Road Films, Caramac Studio, Alicia Ripley, and all the incredible filmmakers who decided to take a chance and submit, and our wonderful panelists, Terry Jones, Jordana, Valerie, Allen-Shim, Lee Campbell, and our host, Tilky Hill. And one more thing, which I keep forgetting, we have a crowdfunding campaign going on right now, and we're so close to the 80% mark, which is what we need to keep any of the money that's been raised so far. So visit seedandspark/fund/micromania-film-festival, and I'll add the link in the event page. Take it away, Tilky. Oh.
Hi, everyone. So I think we're going to play the films of our wonderful filmmakers first before we get into a grand discussion about filmmaking. So we're going to play Terry Jones' film first, followed by Jordana, Valerie, Allen-Shim, and finally Lee Campbell's, and then we'll come back and have a little discussion.
I am my own Google Street View. I am my own Google Earth. I am my own Google Docs. I am my own Google Video View. I am my own Google. Back in 1994, I started archiving photographs. Photography always fascinated me. It was my way to document the American Indian experience. As these pictures were taken, I'd make a mental note about who was there, where it was taken, what I was hearing, and what smells were there. The photograph couldn't do the experience justice, but I sent a copy onto my floppy disk and I saved it for the future. Since that time, my archive now contains photos, videos, documents, letters, mementos. It's become my legacy. My floppy disks turned into CDs, which turned into DVDs, and eventually massive, unlimited hard drives. Why am I doing this? Who am I saving this for? Who is going to harness this information? Me? My future Seneca brothers and sisters? Today, the internet can teach you to speak another language. You could learn how to cook a recipe from far distant lands. You can visit the Louvre in Paris, France. But is it authentic? Is it good enough? To the Iroquois, our knowledge, our songs, our language, our way of life are all passed down from our elders' mouths to our future's ears. Growing up, the elders told us to never record our language, and that confused me since we were down to 100 fluent speakers. One day, Tom Sherman reminded me that recorded sound originated in the late 1800s. Up to that point in time, everyone in the world heard only real and organic sounds. Now I know why the elders told us not to record our language. Our language is alive and full of experience that can never be captured on a recording. It loses its value. So that's where it gets complicated. I respect my elders' wishes and I never make our communal knowledge available for public consumption. I am a closeted hoarder of inauthentic images and sounds. I may never know how my personal Google archive will be received in the future. What messages can I send to them from beyond? I'll never know.
she, her, hers, and this is a fuck you. This ring was meant for the person I consider. My name is Jordana Valerie. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and this is a fuck you. This ring was meant for the person I consider to be my soulmate. It was meant to be an unapologetically queer embodiment of our unconditional love and acceptance for each other. That didn't work out so well. I mistook unconditional love for not holding them accountable and allowed them to manipulate and abuse me for years, despite the constant warnings of my friends. Back then, it was easy to accept mistreatment because I didn't respect or value myself. It's hard to do so when you spend every day being misgendered and invalidated.
He,
him,
is,
sir.
Part of me wants to perform my trauma right now, to explain how many friends I lost because of transphobia and how it nearly drove me to suicide. Part of me wants to explain my identity, to make people understand the history behind gender and how it was constructed over time. But I'm tired of having to justify my existence. I know now that I cannot live basing my self-worth on what others think of me and my identity. I am a transgender woman and I am valid. So instead, here's an unapologetically queer
fuck you.
Fuck you to the people who misgender me because they don't think trans people are valid. Fuck you to everyone who treats me as a burden because they can't remember my pronouns.
Fuck anyone who hears misgendering and says nothing.
Fuck you to every single... Stop being so politically correct.
I'm sorry if you're offended.
I'm not racist, but fuck you to everyone who still uses gay as an insult. Fuck you if you don't like this. And fuck you to the manipulative asshole this ring was meant for. It took me 5 years to get over you, and 21 to accept myself, but finally, for the first time in my life, I'm fundamentally happy. So I'm done performing queer tragedy. I don't know who this ring will go to, but whoever it is will be gay as in queer and gay as in happy, because we deserve it.
Fuck you, mom. Fuck you, dad. Fuck you, cousin. Fuck anyone. Fuck you, bigot. Fuck the boomers. Fuck you, Doug Ford.
And they've had to hoop the ball out because the left back of Coventry needs attention. Right, remarkable goal! Julian Churchill for Aston Villa. And how do you score from there?
Oh. Little duck.
Hi, how is everyone?
So sorry, what happened about my film?
Yeah, I was wondering, I was texting to ask if we were gonna replay Lee's film. Lee's film didn't get played all the way through.
Thanks.
And they've had to hoot the ball out because the left back of Coventry needs attention. What a remarkable goal! Julian Churchill for Aston Villa. And how do you score from there?
Sets it up for McDonald. Lovely turn from McDonald. Couldn't get the shot in. Great defending though from Stokoe. He came back, spotted the danger. But this is a good spell from Aston Villa. What a huge difference there. I'm finding the hard he's got.
Now then, Dublin, can he make this? And the defender did ever so well. It's Gareth Southgate. It's Dublin ahead of him to start with, but Southgate very cool. Didn't foul. Foul him either, took it cleanly. Brilliant defending by the England man. Coventry to make a second substitution. Peter Unlove is going on. And Coventry's latest signing, Darren Huckabee, comes on for the last 17 minutes. Saw him play for Lincoln, who then saw... He's calling across. With the book out, Noel Whelan. Now that's the initial challenge on Andy Townsend by Whelan that starts it all. That's what got Townsend so angry. Then he had to be tugged back. Just into Draper. Townsend didn't quite want it there, but he's managed to find Staunton. That's a good effort. Oh, Steve Staunton!
Absolute. Give him his domination. Absolute. Give him his domination. Absolute. Give him his domination. Absolute. Give him his domination.
Really deserved. He got me prepared for every eventuality. Really deserved. He got me prepared for every eventuality. Really deserved. He got me prepared for every eventuality. Really deserved. He got me prepared for every eventuality. Really deserved.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad that we got to see that through the end. I love how these three films together have reminded me that as filmmakers, we're all archivists, whether we're hiding the archive like Terry is, you know, tasked to be respectful, or the emotional archive that Jordana has, or this historical archive of memory that Lee has. And I was really struck by that. So I just wanted to share that. For those of you who don't know, I've stepped in last minute and I'm just showing up. So that was my first time seeing those three films, as it may be your first time also. So we're on a truncated amount of time, and I just want to give a little bit of the bios of our amazing filmmakers. I will be reading it directly off of a script. So we first have Terry. Let me find you. Oh, I didn't get a bio for you, Terry, but I've learned about you that you are a non-traditional student and filmmaker, and have made 60 films in your times at Syracuse University, have won 60 as festival selections. So I don't even know how many films you've actually made. And that's what I know about you. Is there anything else you would like to just share about your bio, since I don't have that in front of me?
Yeah, sure. I'm Seneca Indian, or Native American, from the Haudenosaunee, which is located about 50 miles south of Niagara Falls. In 2012, I went back to school. I went to film school. Syracuse is a big university, thinking I'd be the only non-traditional, or thinking there'd be other non-traditional students in the film program. When I went in, there were 49 other high school students, or just out of high school. So I kind of felt different then, with being labeled, especially by age. And my whole thing was that I wanted to be defined by myself, by Terry. There's a lot of different parts of me that intersect. It's like a Venn diagram, and in the middle is me. But I graduated in 2016. I got 60 official selections in film festivals throughout the world, Buenos Aires, and I won Best Documentary in Liverpool, England. A lot of my films have been screened at Imaginative. I think I've had 5 screened there. Imaginative is a film festival in Toronto. It has it's the largest Indigenous film festival in the world. One that's pertinent to this panel, I've made a short film called Untitled and Unlabeled. It's not in this program. And when I was in school, what I more or less did was I wanted to make a coming out video. People had always wondered what's up with Terry, you know, but now that I'm up at a certain age, I'm like, well, you can do the math, you know. I had no girlfriend. I'm a certain age, and anyway, so when I approached my professor about making this coming out video, she goes, well, you know, this isn't really for you. These are for the younger yous that are out there, to let them know that they're not alone. And I found that to be really profound. And so I actually made that film in overnight. I played it for the class once. Everybody got a better sense of who I was. And I kept it in the back on my hard drive. And then I submitted it to Imaginative Film Festival, and it got selected. And it was actually screened, the very first film, on a Saturday night at 8:30 in the TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival screens. And there were, I forgot who was there. There was some cardinal, a tattooed cardinal was in the audience. I'm like, oh my God, she's gonna be watching my film. So I'm going to be coming out to everybody in the theater. And anyway, so that's sort of my my film work in terms of being I'm gay, but I'm not necessarily. My content right now is just that one film. I do have ideas to make more, but not to take up too much time. So presently, I just got accepted into it's called Open Immersion 2. It's a VR lab based out of Toronto. We're doing everything virtually. I'll be working on a VR project with my father, collaborating with my father. We're going to do something with his life story, being kind of like a reluctantly self-isolated in these times, and what his world looks like, interior and exterior. And
awesome. Thank you, Terry. And also, I don't think you can put an age limit on when people come out.
Right, yeah.
So I am glad that you went ahead and made something that clearly spoke to a lot of people, regardless of age, because, you know, age is an ism that people experience also. So I'll come back to you. And next we saw Jordana, Valerie Allen-Shim, I just love saying her name, is a Toronto-born, US-raised filmmaker, a dog mom, and aspiring graphic novelist passionate about empowering marginalized communities through art. Her parents, a Korean immigrant to Canada and a Jewish American, met in Toronto before moving to Connecticut with Jordana, Valerie, and her younger sister. Along with film, Jordana has a deep background in activism and social justice. She also worked in electoral politics for 4 years, holding leadership positions at several major progressive organizations. Her dream project is a superhero film about queer revolutionaries liberating themselves from their oppressors and creating meaningful, positive change in the world. Well, how about that? I love that. Until then, you can find her lugging her camera equipment around the city, cuddling her puppy, who is called Mix Claus Pupperton, not Mr., not Mrs., because Claus Pupperton is non-binary, and or making out on comic books at the library. Maxing out, not making out. Maxing out. I have these glasses on.
I don't think I would do that.
Never say never. Maybe it's an opportunity for something to happen in a film. Making out on a stack of comic books. And our last film that we saw was by Lee Campbell, who is a UK-based fine artist, experimental filmmaker, and performance artist. His work revolves around his personal autobiographical perspective and explores gay male identity and desire. Comedy is an integral part of his work. He uses it to engage, disarm, and highlight. Whilst experimenting with film, he curated film and moving image work, All for Show, which was 2005 to 2007, which was an international touring film show reel of emerging and established British moving image artists whose work exposed the banalities of everyday life through humor, self-introspection, and serious play. In February 2020, he curated Homo Humor, Comedy and Subversion, a selection of short films by queer male artist filmmakers at Edge Zones, Miami, including films by, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Ilker Cinerel, Sean Leviashvili, and Stephen Ristici, and Jake Shannon. Sorry if I butchered any of those names. So, because we are on a, our time is limited, and the title or name of this panel has the word queer in it, and Terry, we did start to talk about that a little bit. And you mentioned that your work so far hasn't necessarily, except for the one film you shared with us, hasn't necessarily brought in your queer identity yet. Do you have visions for that in the future?
Yeah. When I submitted that first film, it's called Untitled and Unlabeled. I did submit it, I think, to the Toronto Queer Festival, and they didn't accept it. But they did see me at Imaginative, that they were at my screening, and they were like, there was so many deliberations over your film because they wanted to include it. But they just didn't have the space. But they said, we're really looking forward to what you do next. And, I sort of look at film projects sort of like a tissue thing, and it's like, okay, what's on top? So I have to concentrate on that. But there is something in the back of my mind. It's more biographical, just in terms of, I think, a lot of indigenous, there's a different coming out for indigenous people, especially on reservations. They're really small. My experience is that especially with my age, is sort of like the people's perceptions of what that means, being gay or being queer, is already aside from what label I have that's placed upon me, I didn't want one particular label to dominate who I was. So in some ways, yeah, I kind of hid behind that. So rather than have people, growing up, some people would say, oh, you act like a sissy, or, are you gay? So instead, I would find other ways for them to comment on me. So I started to, became like a punk rocker. I started, I shaved my head, I colored it blue, so that way people were labeling me as a weirdo, more or less, than a part of my life of who I was. And even to this day, it's still a little difficult for me. I go out in public, here on the reservation, but I know people are still trying to figure me out. I'm like a walking question mark, but I'm not hiding. If they were to, and that's the whole thing when I was tell people, I'm like, if they were to ask me in a polite way, I would say yes. But if you're going to say it in a derogatory way or a judgmental way, I'm going to say, well, that's not your business of what I am. So.
I think that's, and maybe, maybe because of your age, because that's come up sometimes, and, the generation that you're from, like, the experience is different than that of someone who is a lot younger. So I applaud your bravery in making that film. And I think, you definitely have like a very interesting story to share. And I would love to see that short film also.
Actually, that film, Untitled Unlabeled, is on Amazon Prime Video in the US and the UK, if you have Prime Video.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I am very, the younger generation of today, they're fluid in gender and they're fluid in their sexuality. And from my social media posts, I can see a lot of Native Americans. That's not an issue now. It's not a big issue. I think the big issue for me, or people my age, it's an internal thing, judgmental thing that you have to learn to, you're constantly every day learning to overcome it. I'm not ashamed of it. It's just not, it's just, I don't know how to explain it, but.
No, I think I totally understand what you're saying, and that leads nicely into Jordana Valerie's work, and also, what her position is in her film, which is basically, fuck you, I'm going to be who I am, in a celebratory way, also investigating how the external societal pressures and culture can make you, turn in on yourself and then have experiences which then keep repeating that style of thing. So I have to say, Jordana, Valerie, that my favorite word is fuck. So I'm a big fan. And while it is clear from the work that the short film that we've seen today, that you are embracing your queerness through and with your work. Can you share with us in any ways, like how you see that like developing more?
Yeah. In terms of sharing it through my work, this was definitely the most personal movie I've made. I'm very hesitant about making anything about myself directly, but I had been doing documentary for a while, and this just kind of felt right given how I was feeling and what was going on in my life. So in the stuff I'm working on now, I'm only really interested in telling queer stories. So I'm trying to just tell a variety of stories that are really positive looks at the community, and opportunities to see us in happy, in this case, fictional environments.
Yeah, I can see like the trend going there through the short that we saw today. Like even though it's a fuck you, it's a celebratory fuck you, right? It's like a reclamation of the fuck you. So I definitely, I look forward to seeing more of that style of celebration. I think I really enjoyed that. And I'm glad that I read, so I'm going to bounce over to Lee. I'm glad that I read your bio, Lee, because I was laughing at I was like, oh, this is super funny. Like, this is an experimental film, but like, it's very funny. Your dad's like, what his experience of watching something like this is, and then the way that you just presented, like, well, I'm watching, I was looking at his red jockstrap, and
because I was watching the video, and the first like text says, "My dad remembers the match," and then the second one says, "I remember the players," but I don't know if that came up on the screen. I couldn't quite work that out. I think it seems to be missing from that.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure if I saw that. It might have been missing when we replayed, when it got replayed.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that people knew that there was that. It's obviously clear with the other ones, but yeah, so there's these two very different interpretations of the same football match, or different experiences or ways that my dad understanding it one way and me having a completely different occupation with it, or completely different, using football as a means to explore sexuality, I guess. In a quite way. And sort of laughing at the sort of now, like 40 years later, laughing in the absurdity of it as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes things are so tragic, and we just have to see the humor in everything, and sort of celebrate the humor, and just our own personal, and just juxtaposing your father's and then your experience like this, and the layering, the tearing. Was that artwork that you had made? I see you're a fine artist also.
Yeah, so I don't come from film. I come from painting, actually. I trained in painting about 20 years ago, made a lot of painting and drawing, then moved into performance and performance art. And only last year, after many, many years of making performance art, did I go back to look at those paintings and drawings that I made 20 years ago. And I was having an artist discussion, and someone said, it's amazing that you have all this back history of painting and drawing, but we just never realized it because we see you as a performer, as a performance artist. So film was a really great way of me to go back over all of that old work and then bring it back to life, to reinvent it, to excavate it, but then it's really interesting to think about the kind of meanings that those drawings had when I made them as a teenager, sort of 15, between the ages of 15 and 20. and sort of now, and what kind of different changes in meaning and how things have changed, I guess, or not.
Yeah, and yeah, just again going back to the sort of archivist theme of your work, you three panelists, this idea like, oh, going back to this thing that you have, like, you know, you've got your paintings, Terry's got the different media, Jordana, Valerie has the ring, which is like, you know, this, and about how, you know, the media can be so visceral, and then utilizing film to share it with everyone. I was also struck and just thinking like each of you basically made these films by yourself with your own, yeah, maybe a little help here and there, you know, I think from some friends acting or, you know, guidance maybe, but really these are the types of films that can be made right now. And you know, because I think a lot of filmmakers right now are a little bit of fearful of the times that we're in, but it's like, look at this, like you have this constraint, 5 minutes, what can you make? And there's such a, almost when you put it in this shorter container, things just, you can just grasp onto everything that's popping rather than the long form. And I was really struck by that, watching all of your work, thinking like, oh, well, these guys can just do it all themselves. Like, what are they going to make next? So before I have to pop off and Lucia is going to pop back on, I wondered if there was, I had this idea. Okay, so I wondered if, well, just let's say, does anybody want to share anything else about their work? To open it up to everyone.
I've never addressed identity, like my own personal identity, my own queer identity, my work at all. And I remember the first time I showed this work, and I found it incredibly uncomfortable. Like, oh my God, this is so incredibly personal. This is so incredibly autobiographic. And I had to almost hide when I was at the first screening. But I think it's really interesting how, even though we might be talking around queer issues, there's a universality to this as well that anybody can relate to. I mean, obviously there's nuances, but I just think that with certainly with the 3 films I've seen, I think everybody can relate to them regardless of subjectivity. I think that's really, really important. And if it's not so much to do with the actual content of the work, then it's also the techniques within the work. Like for me, Jordana's work parts of it really remind me of Tongues Untied, and that kind of use of spoken word in that film, if you've seen it. But there's something really interesting around the form as much as the content with all 3 works, I think, as well.
I agree. And just piggybacking off of that, before I say goodbye and thank you, you know, we're all revealing something we're all wearing masks all the time. Filmmakers are not. And it's super brave for us to peel back part of our mask and say like, hey, like this is a part of myself. And they were all deeply personal in that way. And I really want to say like I'm super impressed by that, because it's so difficult for me to take off my own mask. So I really celebrate that, whether it, you know, we're all hiding, covering up, or, you know, ashamed or not wanting to reveal part of ourselves or be vulnerable. It's difficult. Vulnerability is difficult. So I just wanted to say thank you to you all. I'm glad I got to chat. I'm super happy that I said I could do it too, because I really loved all of your work and chatting with you all. And I'm going to pass it over to Lucia, and she'll say some stuff. And yeah, good luck. I would love to be kept updated about your works. I know Lucia is going to post full links to everything on social media pages too, so people can go back and rewatch. So bye.
Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
You guys can hold on for a second if you like. Was there anything anybody else wanted to add that they're working on? Anything you didn't get a chance to say? Terry? Jordana?
There was there was one thing. So as I said, it's sort of like this gradual coming out. So I was asked by a friend. There was this thing called Meeting of the Minds. It's a native like get together for mental health. So she knew me in New York when I had my other lifestyle than my reservation one. But she said, "We'd like you to come in." And I said, "Well, I have this video." And she goes, because she wanted to talk about kind of like marginalized community members. So I said, "Well, I have this video called Untitled Unlabeled." So, and I thought when the day happened, I thought I was going into a room of like 20 people, and it turns out there were like 150. And it wasn't just 150 people; it was 150, and a lot of them were from my community members. So I'm like, "Oh no, they're gonna find out about me now." So I'm like, so anyway, so I was up on stage, and we screened it, and everybody was very well received. And my mom actually got tears in her eyes because it got received so well. And then I had to leave that day, but then the organizer, she contacted me. She goes, "After you left," she goes, "there were 2 people who came out because they were so inspired by you and your work. And one was even an elder, an elderly or elder, community elder." So, it's just the power of, you never know, that my film's 2.5 minutes long, and all of our films, they can make such an impact that a long form can do it, but short, you can do it if you do it well. It can resonate in people in ways that we can only imagine.
Absolutely. And MicroMania is all about creating this sort of platform for everyone, because films 5 minutes and under cost less to produce. Anyone can grab their phone and make a film, tell their story. So we don't have to be dependent on other people telling our story in a way that might not be properly representative. Jordana, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Not really. I'm working on a few screenplays right now, but very early development stages.
Excellent. Lee, any last words?
I'm working on another follow-up written piece, but I've also just started not a festival, but kind of a curatorial film project around Home of Humour. And it's really exciting to see where that's going. They're all short films. And I agree about the short film format being really of the moment, and I suppose it makes you get to the point. You've only got 4 or 5 minutes. And I think that's really good for me, particularly because I think made a film which is 1 minute long, which isn't long enough, or it's really to the point. And then I've done 15, 20 minutes, and then it goes in terms of duration, can be a bit too long. And 5 minutes is actually perfect because it still allows for some shades. It still allows for little bits of room for breathing, but you still got to get to the point quite quickly. So it's a good format. And I'd be really interested to see, particularly now that we're this kind of culture of Instagram and the 1 minute Instagram. Is 5 minute the optimum spectacle? Is it is it the best viewing time? Is there are we kind of charging our brains now to these kind of different viewing times, which maybe the 90 minute spectacle is somewhat redundant. I don't know. Not sure. Maybe.
I think there's room for all of it. Honestly, the more different people like different things. That's all. So I guess we should wrap it up. But I wanted to let you know that part of my plan is to create content year round and have these discussions, because MicroMania is not intended to be a one-off single event once a year, but so much more. I mean, you're all aware, and you have your films on our streaming channel on Vimeo. They're hidden right now with a promo, but once the festival is over, I'll be making them live again, and we'll be adding films all the time. And I don't know if you're aware, but we hit over 200,000 views in just under 4 months. So that's saying something to me. I think there's a lot of potential here, and I want to thank each and every one of you. I honor your voices, your art, your humanity, everything. And I am so grateful for you, for taking a chance and trusting in me. So
No,
we'll
thank
see, we'll see you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your hard work. It's really,
You're welcome.
it's really noticeable, and we're all very grateful and thankful. So thank you. It's very good for one's confidence.
Good. I'm very happy to hear that.
Mm.
That's most important to me, is like what this does for all of you.
Mm.
So enjoy, and we'll speak again.
Yes,
Indeed.
definitely.
Thanks, Kia.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.